Well, you mentioned something earlier about this deal where like Huawei might be able to get parts in U.S.
Well, like set the standards for 5G, right? Is that
Yeah,
this ORAN alliance thing?
Yeah, so it's actually more than standard setting, which they are standard setting, but it's actually an industry alliance,
Hmm.
and so it includes all the big Chinese or global and China included telecom service providers like your T-Mobiles, your AT&Ts, China Mobile, China Unicom, all these guys in Europe, Japan, other countries like that. And then it also includes big component makers, Nokia, Ericsson, Intel, Microsoft, Google, all these guys. And then it also includes small players, research institutions, all this kind of good stuff. And so they're not just standard setting; they're actually developing the products in concert. And so it actually has a couple of unique wrinkles in the sense of the companies as part of joining this alliance. Part of the agreement is that you agree to license intellectual property that comes out of this to other companies in the alliance. And so there's probably 30 or 40 Chinese companies that are in this alliance. Many of them there's a number of them that are entity list or on the U.S. government PLA owned list. And of course, many of the ones that you've never heard of are very tightly linked to the government. Some of them even the military. And so think about this. The U.S. government is backing this project, and we are requiring U.S., European, Japanese companies to license intellectual property to these Chinese companies, okay? Because that's part of the alliance agreement. The other part is that in the development, because again, they're not just standard setting; they're actively developing these products. As part of the development, Chinese companies are actually helping to develop the code and hardware for this. So this means the Chinese PLA and also tangentially Russian companies get access to the entire source code that is going to make up the ORAN product line that U.S. government hopes will go into U.S. telecoms network. Now, to me, I personally just think it's absolutely, Looney Tunes that we would, basically hand over source code for U.S. telecom networks or parts of U.S. telecom networks to the Chinese PLA and Russian security services. But again, I'm an extremist according to some.
So how long has this been going on?
So the alliance itself was founded in 2018, and it was probably 2019-20 before it really started gaining attention and getting political support. And so in the 2021 National Defense Appropriations Act, which was actually passed in December 2020, a year ago, with some funding for this year, it was received support from Senator Mark Warner and Marco Rubio, with Senator Warner coming out of a telecoms background and Senator Rubio wanting to demonstrate his anti-China credentials.
Wait, so they supported it?
They supported this, yes, and so there was actually some funding, and I want to say it was a total of about up to $1.5 billion that could be used to help fund research, things like that that went into this overall project. Yes,
I'm confused because you said Rubio supported it, but he supported it in order to.
Yes. So So what happened is there would be for instance, there are U.S. companies in this, like Qualcomm, things like that. So if they came to the U.S. funding agency and said, hey, we're going to do research on XYZ aspect of interoperability, is the keyword. We're going to do, and we estimate this specific part of research to cost $50 million or something like that to further ORAN objectives. Development costs, things like that. different companies could secure funding from the U.S. government to push to help push the ORAN concept forward.
But you said Rubio was doing it because he wanted to burnish his anti-China credentials, but it seems like this is helping China. Am I not getting it?
Yes, no, you're absolutely right, and so it is rather puzzling. And honestly, like I have tried repeatedly, and I cannot get any type of satisfactory answer. I can't really get an answer from anyone as to how this is helping to secure U.S. telecoms networks from adversaries like China and Russia. Because again, it's not just China, it's not just Russia. Why would you want to give countries like that key source code, license them U.S. intellectual property, that is going into next generation technologies in U.S. telecoms networks?
Well, so given how allowing China to join this is stupid, why did it get to the point where decision makers were like, yeah, let's let China join, let's let Russia join? Like, why didn't we just make it an American thing, or maybe an America EU thing?
There's a couple of things. This was initiated by some of the key corporations, globally in the telecom space, and the telecom service providers basically were complaining that they thought they were overpaying for network equipment. So one of the key aspects of like Huawei's ETE is that they charge, let's say, about 30% less on average, for the straight sticker price of gear than like a Nokia or an Ericsson. So telecom service providers, your T-Mobiles, your AT&Ts, Verizons, et cetera, and similar companies around the world, were basically saying, hey, we need to create more competition in this space. Because basically, globally in the network market, in the network equipment market, you basically have Huawei, ZTE, Nokia, and Ericsson. So if you're going to tell an American telecom service provider that is going to build a 5G network that you can't use ZTE or Huawei, you're basically left with two companies. So they thought they were overpaying. So they said, we need to make these networks. Oh, and also the networks didn't really work together. Okay, so you could run 50% of the country on Nokia and 50% of it on Ericsson, but you couldn't just take out a Nokia part and put in an Ericsson part. Okay, it didn't work that way. So they said, what if we could have these networks so that I could rip out a Nokia part and just stick in an Ericsson part when it broke or became obsolete? And so it was really pushed by the telecom service providers and some of the smaller network equipment providers. But what they did is they went to the politicians and said, look, get behind this project, because this becomes a way for you to foster a national champion. So you actually had smaller countries in Europe getting behind this because they said, hey, we don't like that those Scandinavians, control everything. So if I'm France, if I'm Germany, if I'm, some of these other countries, I can get behind this. The American politicians got behind it because they said, hey, this is possible for us because America doesn't really have a key company here. And also this helps us get away from China. But what the alliance had started doing is they had started letting Chinese companies in. I suspect on the political side that basically they are very close with telecom providers, and so they went along with what the telecom providers were telling them, and they did not actually research what are the key details of this alliance and who are the companies that are going to have access to this technology. So I suspect that on the political side, it's the same. It's a very similar story of big money and not actually researching the topic that they were basically spending public money on.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems so.
Well, like everything that was being done with like the clean 5G networks.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like the Trump administration made this huge push for clean 5G,
getting Chinese telecoms, particularly Huawei, out of any kind of global telecommunications chain.
But then at the same time, this other thing was going on, and now we're funding it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, so this is kind of an issue. Like, there's always like. Any move forward by any administration always seems to be messed up by like these like either, like in this case, it seems like you're saying that telecommunications companies are responsible for giving China a backdoor. We also constantly have issues with like Wall Street, the Ray Dalio type people. And this is significant because I think one of the biggest weapons the United States has against the Chinese Communist Party right now is economic leverage. Like we were talking about the blacklists earlier of Chinese tech companies.